Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Things That Matter with me, Marty McNabb. If you have been following along for a while, or even if you're new, this show is all about the stories that get attached to the things that we surround ourselves with, the things we adorn ourselves with, the things we keep, the things that matter, and the things that we will leave behind. So, basically, I am a firm believer that our homes, our spaces are our personal museums, and that we are all a part of history. We are always living history, and we are always leaving a legacy, whether we are conscious of it or not. So that's a perfect segue into today's guest. I am so grateful to have my friend, my good friend, Reverend Yolanda, join me today. And a little background. I do believe that Yolanda and I have known each other for over a decade.
Oh, yes.
Yes, like not quite 2 decades, but over a decade. And I believe by some happenstance or by some God wink, we connected on Facebook. And I'm not sure exactly why we were inspired, why it was inspired, but I sent Reverend Yolanda a message on Facebook and I said, I would love to get together. I'd love to meet you. And so Yolanda was willing to come to Brooklyn, my neighborhood of Brooklyn in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn. Um, think you were out and about somewhere anyway, and you're
Yeah.
like, yes, I'm happy to come. And so we met at a coffee shop called the Hungry Ghost in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn. And the next thing I know, I look out the window. I'm waiting. Of course, I haven't met her in person. And so I'm like, who is this person? What is going to happen? Like, whatever. And all of a sudden, I see across Flatbush Avenue, I see this very tall woman with a very big wig on and high heels. And the next thing you know, she's looking both ways and running across the street to meet up with me. And that is the first impression I have of Reverend Yolanda. And I fell in love with her from the moment I met her.
Oh,
And we've been fast friends ever since. And now I am so grateful that she lives in the state that I live in part time. She's up in Vermont. So just
yes.
about an hour from my mom. And we got a chance to see each other before I left this fall. And that was great. And now I get to have her on as a guest. And I'm so very excited. Oh, and my good friend from high school, Patty Van Dusen, and we ended up, one of the last things I did before I hit the road to come out to Albuquerque was to go to Yolanda's concert that she had. And I met my friend from there, and it was just the most fabulous. But she'll tell you more about that stuff at the end of our time together. Because you know what? If you've been following along, you know what this section is. This first section of my podcast is always the show and tell section, like from elementary school. And I can't wait to see what Reverend Yolanda brought to show and tell. So I am going to turn over the stage to you, and then you can take it away.
Okie dokie then. Ooh, here we go. Well, hi everybody. Thank you, Marty, for having me. And what an adventure I've been on, ever since, well, the whole 9 yards. I'm writing a musical about that one, the whole stretch, but since you and I have been together, when we met, I was married to my husband, Reverend Glen, and we were uh, creating a church. We called it Church with a Two Drink Minimum, and we met, at the clubs and everything in New York and had fun. And so anyway, over the years, in 2020, we bought this property here in Vermont because we both love Vermont so much, and I had lived here in the 90s before I moved back to New York at the beginning of 2000. But anyway, we bought this property, and in 2024 we were getting ready to move because our lease had come up, and our decision was to move up here full time in the summer of 2024. Well, in March of 2024, my husband passed away from a heart attack. And it shattered my world. It absolutely shattered my world. And just, it's still fairly recent, and I'm still dealing with, I don't call it a loss anymore. I call it a change in our relationship because I feel his presence so strongly from the other side, however that works. And, and I keep his cell phone on, and it's right here. And sometimes he beeps when I'm talking about him. So we'll see what happens. But what I wanted to share with you is something actually new, but it has really been pivotal in my healing process, which is amazing to me, actually. I mean, my house is a museum. It is full of paintings that I've done. Oh, here in the background is sort of blurred, but anyway, paintings that I've done, and pictures of me and Glen, and posters of concerts, and all kinds of things like that. And I have so much that I could share with you. However, I decided to bring this because this is something new I did for myself on our anniversary. Glen and I met on Thanksgiving, and then a few years later, when it was legal, we got married on Halloween. But when this season came, I decided to treat myself to this little children's storybook. Now, I also do story time with drag story time with kids, so I'm really fond of children's stories. So what this was, I'm just going to show you first. So here we go. So this is the book. It's called Glen's Adventures, and it was one of those books where you upload a picture, online, and then it prints out this book. So Glen is the main character, and I'm his sidekick, which is how we did our lives, really. It was like, I loved him so much, and I still do, but he was such a guide and a strength for me, and he always said I was his perfect sidekick, so I thought I'd share a little bit about this. And the healing aspect of it is, well, twofold or severalfold, really. Glen and I are just science fiction fans, like, wah, out the wazoo, right? And one of the things that we just loved doing was sitting and watching our favorite sci-fi shows and deciding which character I could play and which character he could play. And so I decided it would be really fun. And then when he passed, I think of passing as starting on a new adventure. That's because that's the way I think of life, that it's eternal, and this is a piece of it that we're living right now. But then when we leave this body, there's more to come. So the healing part of it is like, yes, of course, Glen is on a new adventure. Look at that cute little picture of him. It's so adorable. He's going, do, 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 do. So I'm just going to share. It's real short. Episode 1, believe it or not, this is exactly what happened. Ask anybody who was there. So we went on this adventure. Let me see if I can get back a little. There's a starship, it says. A spaceship zoomed across the sky. A real spaceship. Yay! Across the night sky, the spaceship flew, but it was coming down, down, down. Why was it landing? Was it coming to say hi? Was it in trouble? And then, so Glen and Yolanda ran to find it, which of course we would do if there was a spaceship hanging out. So we ran to find it. And there it was, behind the trees, under the starry, starry sky. And all the lights were on, so Glen knocked on the door. Of course he did. Of course he did, which would be exactly what he would do. And a voice said, "Come in." So, but there was nobody there. There was nobody there. And as they explored the ship, Glen imagined all the places they could visit with a spaceship. Oh, yeah. Like faraway planets or out at sea. I love that. A little pirate. Oh. And then, or even the past. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm big on time travel. I just think that's the coolest thing. All the lights lit up, and suddenly there was a voice from nowhere. "Glen, thank you. Your imagination has charged my engines. Together, we can go anywhere." And who are you? Asked Glen. "Are you the spaceship?" "Yes," said the voice. "I am the dream ship, powered by dreams. But you can just call me Dreams." Oh. What I think is fascinating, one thing I think is really fascinating about this book is that the downloaded picture seems to change expression in each page. I think it's really amazing. "Yolanda, will you come with me?" Glen asked. "Of course," said Yolanda. And I like that wig Yolanda's wearing in here. It's really cute. "Let's go then," said Glen, and the engines fired up. "Where to?" Dreams asked. Ever met a real dinosaur? Ah! Oh, he's so excited. He can't wait to meet a dinosaur. "Who will Glen meet on the planet of the dinosaurs?" So I have to buy the next book to find out. Oh goodness. So that was it. And what I'm thinking is, since it's about our adventure, that when I die, well, I want to be buried on my land, and I want that book with me. I want to
Oh,
take that book with me. Yeah.
for your next adventure.
For my next adventure. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
So,
I love I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love especially that I got a chance to experience the children's out, like you, reading a story at drag queen story
story hour. Yeah.
story
Yeah.
hour, like,
Yeah.
because I obviously have never gone to that myself.
Yeah.
So I don't have any children, so this was my first experience of that.
Yeah.
And you're right. The what it the AI, I imagine that is able
Yeah.
to change the position of
Yeah.
the face slightly and a little bit of
Hmm.
expression difference and everything. It's
Yeah.
it's quite fascinating. I
It is.
absolutely love it. And needless to say, I know all about your and his love of sci-fi, and
Yes,
look
yes,
right behind you and see one of the
yes.
paintings, like many of the paintings that are in your place.
Yeah,
And so you had mentioned about where you want this adventure, this book, to be when you're dead and gone, because that's my always my follow-up question is,
yeah,
what would you
yeah,
like to have happen? And I know that we have spoken in the past about, even before we hopped on Zoom this time, I mean, hopped on recording this time,
yeah, yeah,
about you know, considering what you'll do with the museum, because
yeah.
not only is it your museum, but it's also Glen's museum.
It
Um,
is.
and
And I truly feel it's yeah, it is. It truly is. And I also truly feel that it's a part of Vermont history and a part of Brooklyn history, really, because well, for me, Ver Vermont history. I originally moved to Vermont in the 90s, as you know, and lived in the Burlington area, and that's where Yolanda really came alive because I was kind of afraid to be myself before, I don't know. I joined the Radical Fairies. We found each other and we were living in a commune, and then I found the freedom to start calling myself Yolanda all the time and dressing up and presenting as I wanted to. And Burlington just wide open arms, right? And that was a time in the 90s when the LGBTQ community, I feel, maybe you'll remember this same way or you can have some info on this, but I feel in the 90s, the LGBTQAI community was really just beginning to come out, like people were, there were always been a lot of us here, but people were kind of stuck away in places. And I began to run a trans support group at Vermont Cares, and I found so many people from all over the state that had been waiting for an opportunity for there to be a group or something public where they could come and be themselves. And and so then that turned into our band, Yolanda and the Plastic Family, and we created, and I was diagnosed as HIV positive, so we started a fundraiser for Vermont Cares, which is called The Winter is a Drag Ball, which is still going after 30 years. So a lot of that history here, and some history of, you know, me and Cherry Tart, with the Cherry and Yolanda show on public access, and then the House of LeMay and Noelle. I don't know if you remember her. She was from St. Johnsbury, a singing drag queen. And we just, the group of us kind of went all over the state and visited high schools and did all kinds of things. And, along with many other organizations that were forming, and especially Outright and stuff like that, people began to really be visible. And now, Burlington for sure is like, wow, drag queen friendly, trans friendly, queer friendly. It's so, and there's so many events and everything now all over Vermont. And so I feel like I'm a part of that history.
you are
And,
absolutely.
and I want to preserve this somehow. And
Yeah,
then, of course, when Glenn and I met each other and went to seminary, and all of this happened in Brooklyn and stuff, and started creating Church with a Two Drink Minimum, and then got married in the New York City Halloween Parade, which was, we were the I don't think there's ever been a couple after us that have done it. We were the first couple of any persuasion to get married in the Halloween parade. In a horse and buggy riding down through the parade, and so that was also historic. And we did a lot in our 20 years together
yeah,
in Brooklyn that I wanna memorialize.
absolutely.
And Glenn, of course, is a scholar and a writer and a teacher of A Course in Miracles, and he has extensive, comprehensive writings about A Course in Miracles, which I'm looking right now to have published. I've engaged a literary agent, and so, my remaining time here on Earth, I want to create new music and new art for from my own
Yes.
place. But I also have a an archive of incredible creative work and scholarly work from Glen that I truly want to memorialize, have available to people,
Yeah.
that kind of thing,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we've spoken about it, um and I always say this on at my events is that, our history isn't ours alone.
Yes,
Um it is our collective history, um and it's important to look at it like that. And I'm glad that
it
you are
is.
looking at it like that. It is a legacy. And, there's so many people who are like, oh, minimalism. I don't like stuff. I'm just going to get rid of things and whatever. And it's just like, I say, thank goodness the Marie Kondo craze didn't come in to fashion when, the Museum of African American History was being built and done, because it's like, what are we going to do? Walk into a museum and there's nothing on the walls, nothing in cases, nothing
Yeah,
on, but it's like,
yeah,
you know, we tell stories. It's not the things matter. We tell
yeah.
stories. Our stories get connected to those things. That's why they matter. And
That's why
um,
they matter.
that's why they
Exactly.
matter.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I'm glad that you're considering it, and we're talking about it. I
Yes,
want to be
yes.
a part of this. I know that there's several smaller archives. I know that my understanding is UMass Amherst has
Oh,
a LGBTQ history program. So
oh,
you may not find a quote unquote permanent placement in Vermont or in
right.
Brooklyn
Yeah.
for it, but you may end up being able to find a repository that
Yes,
then can loan it out.
yes, yes,
Things like there's possibilities, because of course, as you know, especially now, um, archives and archivists and history is being rewritten,
yes,
and stolen and hidden.
yes,
But we have some very cool archivists that have done work during World War II and all
yes.
kinds of other times. So
Yeah.
I know that these will survive somehow. Um,
I do too. I really have a confidence in that. And thank you for reaffirming that with me. And thank you for working with me on a three-dimensional physical level to sort of figure some of this out. Your your interest in this is amazing, and I truly, truly appreciate it. Not just for me personally and Glenn, but for all of us that you interact with. I mean, it is so important. Our stories are incredibly important, and all of us, have amazing stories.
Well, and what you were just saying is that stories change, stories have the ability to change the world,
They do.
right?
They
Because
do.
you were talking about your stories when all the stuff that you did in Vermont, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and going to the high schools and going
Hmm.
to the thing, and even your drag queen, you know,
Story hour. Yeah.
story
Hmm.
hour and all of that, those things, those experiences, they change the world.
They
And
do.
that's why they're important. And
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
I feel honored to be a part of helping you figure this out and to preserve this important history, your important history. So
Thank you. Thank you,
yeah,
my love.
yeah. So this part of the episode is always about, I invite you, I'll give you the stage again, and I invite you to let my look-in listeners know a little bit more about you, how they can find you, how they can follow you, all of those good things, because this is all wonderful history, but you should hear her voice. Absolutely, and be in her presence if you have any opportunity to do so. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand the stage over to you again, and you can take it away.
Oh, thank you, darling. Well, so I describe myself as a trans femme, genderqueer, singer, songwriter, and interfaith minister. And we Glenn and I went to seminary, and so we did graduate, and we are ordained, and um, uh, I still talk about him, that way. It's so funny because I just really feel him with me all the time. Anyway, to find me is really quite easy. My website is yolanda.net or revyolanda.com, whichever you prefer. REV Yolanda.com or just Yolanda.net. Um, and just about all my social media is slash Rev Yolanda, REV Yolanda. So Facebook slash Rev Yolanda, YouTube slash Rev Yolanda. Used to be Instagram, but somebody hijacked my Instagram, so I can't get back in there. So for now, we'll have to discard Instagram. But really, I use Facebook and my website and YouTube as my main, you know, places to find me. Um, so I've got 9 albums of original music that have chronicled my story from being born in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, which is called the hit recording capital of the world. And it truly was and still survives as a recording center. But if some of you don't know what Muscle Shoals is, there's a wonderful documentary about it called Muscle Shoals, describing the whole evolution of the music scene there. But my dad was really involved in the music scene there, and that was when we're talking about music scene, we're talking about the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin, Cher, George Michael, Leonard Skinner, like tons and tons of top artists that came there to record. And so we grew up around all of that. And I came by, my brother is also a music minister, actually. And so we grew up learning how to play the guitar. And I joined my first professional band at age 17. And that's where I learned to write songs and all of that. So um, then I went to college and then I moved to New York City, and that's where, in the 80s, so that's where I contracted HIV. But um, then later on, I met the Radical Fairies, moved to Vermont, and I told you that whole story. And came alive as my true self, Yolanda, and that's when my music really started taking off. So, since the '90s, from now, those 9 albums have been recorded, and I'm currently this year, 2026, working on a new album. So, this year after Glen's passing has been full of creative expression and in response to what I have remembered about the truth of myself after his physicality left this plane. So it's not, they're not songs of mourning or grieving or anything like that. Most of them very joyous and what I would say truth teachings about our own, all of us, like the joy and the peace that we truly have inside of us, regardless of the experiences we're going through, if we access that, and not to take away from crying or suffering or grief or any of that, because that's important too, to feel all of that. And honestly, like the book really helped me a lot through my grieving process. But the thing is, I don't think, and probably this is true for anyone that's lost anybody that's hugely important to them. I don't think I'll ever stop missing him or crying about it. Whatever. I wake up usually in the morning and there are tears. They're just still tears, and that's fine. I feel that now, not so much as I'm missing something, but more like, oh, this is my connection that I can feel with him. I wake up and I love my life. I do. It's so funny. I love my life and I love this land I live on. I love the community here in Vermont. I love being able to see you when you're here in Vermont, and just this adventure after Glen's physical 3D presence is quite. I mean, it's so different than what I thought it would be, because I didn't expect him to not be here. But it's really joyous and fulfilling, and I know he's with me at every step of the way. So what happens between now? I'll find a way to archive everything and preserve everything. Anyway, I just wanted to conclude that, please connect with me. Also, at my website, there's a contact form that goes directly to me. So that's Yolanda.net or Rev Yolanda.com, Facebook/Rev Yolanda, and YouTube/Rev Yolanda. And on YouTube especially, I do a weekly podcast, and I post them every week on YouTube. So, and there's tons and tons of videos and history and all kinds of stuff. So YouTube itself is an archival place for me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Reverend Yolanda, for share being here and doing your show and tell and sharing
Thank you.
your joy and warmth and talking about your grief and how you're moving it and using it for creativity and staying connected and keeping his memory alive and living your best life on the land that you both bought um, to live your best lives on. So
We did. We most certainly did. So
thank
I'm
you.
committed to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you everyone for joining me and joining Reverend Yolanda for this episode of Things That Matter with Marty McNabb. And as I always do at the end, I encourage you to look around at the things that you keep, the things that you inherited, the things that you found, the things that matter, the things that um, you will leave behind, and make sure that you share the story because it really is about the stories. So
Yes.
thank you again and have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.